Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a book review of the book The Sorcerer's Daughter by Terry Brooks, the third book in the Defenders of Shannara trilogy. This year I said I wanted to get through some more Terry Brooks books, so I read The High Druid's Blade, which was entertaining, but I had some problems with it. And then I read The Darkling Child, which was less entertaining, but still entertaining, but had some problems with. And unfortunately, I feel the same way here. The way I would describe this trilogy of books is mediocre and mixed. There is so much mediocre and mixed about this trilogy. There are some fantastic ideas and some great characters present. A lot of the morals of the story I do not like, a lot of the way the plot is handled, and a lot of the way the pacing works I do not like. For example, the first book, amazing premise, like a fantastic premise. The first 70 pages are amazing. But the book overuses the villain too much and overuses battles between the main character and the villain. Villain big boss battles should be very rare in these types of books, and instead it happens like 3 or 4 times in the first book. Way too much. It should have happened like twice, at most. At most. An introduction, and then a big battle at the end. That's what it should have had. Book 2 had the villain present, although he wasn't necessarily battling with our main character, but instead they just jerk the reins over, and you just all of a sudden, you're in a new with a new character that you've never been with before, and it just feels kind of out of the blue. And it's like you have so many great characters you already established in book 1. Why are you like not abandoning them because they're present, but why are you sidelining them? Why are you minimizing them and just bringing in this random character? Instead, focus on the cast that you promised in the first book. So you have that. Then you have book 3, where he brings back the original cast, which I appreciate, although he does bring in new members, but he brings back the original cast for the most part. And he also brings in the villain, but the problem is the villains use way too little in this book. The villain's not set up properly in this book. And also, the book is it's split into 2 stories. One of them's really entertaining, and one of them's pretty boring. And even the entertaining one, I have major problems with. So it's like I can have fun with these books, and I can see there's lots of entertaining value to them, but there's many problems I have with them. So let's go through specifically with this book. This book, it splits off into 2 storylines. You have the storyline with Paxton Lee and all the druids that are going down to meet with the leadership. Darrow, I believe, is the leader of the coalition, I believe, and they're all having a meeting, or is it Pharaoh or Darrow, whatever. They're having a meeting with the coalition, and this storyline was just bland. It didn't particularly interest me. The things go awry. They're trying to get back to the base, all that stuff. It's pretty boring. Then you have the storyline with Leofer and with the changeling Imri, who she kind of hires to help her save Chrysalin, who's been captured. That storyline was really fascinating throughout. The way he describes the character of Imri, the background of Imri, the relationship, the dynamic between Imri and Leofer is really good. And then also Chrysalin is captured by someone. I won't talk about who, but that whole sequence of when Chrysalin's captured and her interacting with her captor is really well done. The problem is that Terry Brooks starts portraying morality in a bad light, and it really is frustrating to see in the book. What I mean is this. 2 of the characters in this book, Leofer and Paxton, have pledged each other to each other, and they've basically become married for all intents and purposes. He doesn't use the term married, I think, because he had certain things he wanted to do in this book. But it's in the fantasy world. It's for intents and purposes. They're married, and yet Leofer really just falls out of love and just leaves him really quickly, and her feelings change, and it's very frustrating because it doesn't seem like he understands the concept of the whole point of marriage, of pledging, is that it means no matter whether your emotions or your feelings fade, you're promised to the person. You're not going to leave their side, and it's just very frustrating the way it unfolds, and it doesn't portray marriage in the proper light, and it doesn't portray a couple in the proper light. And I'm okay with love triangles. I understand if you want to tell a story where there's like two guys who are arguing over the affections of a girl, or two girls over the affections of a guy. Like, I understand that type of love triangle storyline. I get it, but it's different once your characters have pledged each other. Like, once they've pledged together, like this should not continue. And it's just, maybe he wants to go for realism because this maybe happens in real life, but it's not the way couples or characters in love should be portrayed. And so it was very frustrating the way that their love story panned out in this book. Also, then if I'm willing to suspend my argument on that and just say, all right, just go with it. What should have happened to Paxton post breakup was very frustrating. And I was like, okay, well, maybe you're not going to right the ship all the way on the right course, but maybe you're turning back in the right direction. And then, nope, that was a fake out. Nope, it's not ending the way I thought it would, because I thought Paxton would get together with another character. And nope, that doesn't happen. And I was like, come on, Terry. Terry does tell some great romance stories in some of his previous trilogies. Particularly, I loved the Shannara trilogy. I thought he did a great job portraying a romance in that trilogy. I thought he also did a superb job in the High Druid trilogy. The romance there was really good. But here it's just it's so frustrating the way he writes. And I think that it's because Terry himself has changed over time, because, he's been writing these books between when his first books came out and now. It's been like 40 years, more than 40 years. And I think that you see his belief system and his worldview a little bit change in there. And so it's kind of frustrating to me. But the real problems when it comes to my rating of the book come from the plotting, come from the fact that one story was fairly boring, and also from the fact that our canon is way too underused. He's present. He's the main villain, but he's way too underutilized here. And it's especially frustrating since he was overutilized in book one. If Terry had plotted this better, if he had a little introduction in the first portion of the book, and then a big boss battle at the end of the book one where Arcanon wins and our characters have to regroup. Then you'd have book two, where Arcanon's setting everything up. He's setting his plans in motion. Maybe one of Arcanon's lieutenants. I think that the secondary villain in this book should have been in book two instead. And Arcanon's present and just kind of there. And then in book three, you open with Arcanon planning everything out, and you see his plan unfold, and you see him destroy things, and you see him take power the way he wants to take power. And then at the end of the book, you have the big showdown, kind of like the end of the book unfolds. That's how it would have been a much better trilogy. And instead, it just feels all over the place. And the analogy I used in my written review is that it feels like Terry Brooks had all of the ingredients to make a great dish with this trilogy. The problem is he did not have the correct recipe. And so it turns out mixed. And you're like, well, you have everything there. You have the sugar, you have the flour, you have the milk, you have the eggs. All of the ingredients to make the cake are there, but it doesn't come out tasty because they weren't set up properly. And so that's how I feel about not only this book, but about the trilogy as a whole. It's a mediocre, mixed, and unfortunately a letdown of a trilogy. I don't think this is his worst series necessarily, because I think that the duology that he did, Bears of the Black Staff and Measure of the Magic, were awful when it comes to promises and payoffs. At least he paid off most of what he promised in this trilogy. He mostly pays it off, but that's still a really low bar. Like as a trilogy, this is his weakest trilogy, I think. But as an overall story, I think that's the other one is a worse story. But it's frustrating because I know Terry Brooks can turn in great books. I know he can do it. and he just doesn't for some reason at this point. Now, I still have 4 more Terry Brooks books to read after this. I have his his Fall of Shannara, and then I have the Bears the Black Stag. I was sorry, not that one. I have his Word and Void trilogy, but that's like kind of Shannara adjacent. And then he has his new series that he started. But when it comes to specifically Shannara novels, I have 4 remaining to read. I have The Black Elf Stone, The Scar Invasion, The Steel Assassin, and The Last Druid. I am very excited to read all 4 of these books. I hope he sticks the landing. A lot of people say he sticks the landing with this series. So we'll see if I enjoy it a lot or if I don't. So those are my thoughts on The Sorcerer's Daughter. If you've read this trilogy, what were your thoughts on this book? And on the trilogy as a whole, did you agree with me? Do you love this trilogy? If you love it, that's wonderful. Or do you hate it? Let me know that too. Until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.